3 Persian invasions, 3 separate wars. And all these years later, no one has found it.
The tusk of Ganesh.
So this one is called Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, and it's actually the last game that came out. So this is just from 2017. So the thing we just watched was from 2009. So this, you'll notice, looks a lot better. And so also this one is entirely set in India. So I figure you'll also have probably a lot of thoughts about it, good or bad.
Yes. So you got a little market scene in front of your temple. It's interesting. I usually get really annoyed with like Indian-inspired background music, but this is actually kind of good. I like it. Yeah. Is this the same character as the last one? Okay.
That's Chloe. Chloe with the smoky voice.
And the sarcastic demeanor.
Yes.
You don't know the story? Ganesh fought Parashuram, was standing guard at his father's door.
Yes, to defend the honor of his father, Shiva, and got his tusk hacked off for his troubles.
You don't need me. Chloe knows everything you need about Hinduism.
Anyway, it's not for sale.
Or she has at least read the Wikipedia page for Ganesh.
So you do see right outside of temples throughout India, sort of market stalls that have been set up that sell, small deities to devotees as they come in, food and drink and different things. So it's a realistic scene that you would have outside of a temple, which is nice. So her kurta is interesting. It looks like it's like bandhani dyed, so it's like a really interesting way to dye the cotton.
Okay.
It's sort of where bandana comes from that we talk about. So it's sort of this like tie dye, for lack of a better term, that's used to create it, and it's often that red with white. It's a nice kurta. I'd wear it. Shiva Nataraj, that's nice. Dancing Shiva, a wooden form it looks like. I think there was like a recognizable Indian painting, but like in a large canvas form instead. So they probably like mined some art history books. So I've got this sort of like abandoned temple structure that we're looking at, which is pretty cool.
There you are.
How often is it that there's female protagonists in video games? Like, is this quite unusual that it's both women, or?
I think the fact that it's 2 women is definitely pretty unusual. Like for this series, it was definitely a first.
She seems to know what she's doing. Oh.
Is this common in Indian architecture?
Now what?
There's a massive relief carved into the side of that mountain.
Guess it's good I've got an archaeologist's daughter with me.
You don't need to be an archaeologist's daughter to see there's a relief in the wall, surely. Now they're going to see the relief?
Yes.
So they opened up the code with Parsurama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Incredible.
You got that right. Want a closer look?
Sure.
This is definitely having more of like that Indiana Jones vibe, right? Because of all the sort of reclaimed by jungle.
The Hoysala certainly did have a knack for stonework.
And yes, they did. The Hoysala did have a knack for stonework.
And the war, it seems.
Actually, not so much for war. They're remembered more for their architecture and art than sort of military prowess. It's cool because all through India you see the different kinds of stone that's used in temple architecture. And so some of the most intricate carving is from the Hoysala dynasty. And it's a light, soft, supple stone that was easy to carve. So you had that opportunity to do that. Whereas anywhere they use like a granite or a harder stone, it often doesn't have as many details and its ornamentation. Where are they now? Are they in like a church, it looks like?
It's another temple structure. There's more of that.
This is definitely not what you see within medieval temple architecture.
No?
No. It would make pilgrimage much more interesting, though, wouldn't it? Wow. Are they trying to say that they're in Parasurama's temple because it's Rama with an axe? Or That was the first time that I was like, oh, you haven't seen an Indian temple. Like the rest of it, I feel like they've actually been working quite well within known and recognizable iconography.
I think there's points where clearly somebody was like, okay, we got to do something fun here. And that's when it gets a little bit like over the top and crazy with moving statues and things like that. Yeah.
What the hell?
Why couldn't they just do that? Well, who knows
Because
what
you
they
had-
couldn't do it the first time.
Yeah.
You had to do other things first. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, exactly. Because you need things to do
Just,
in games.
Wow.
Hard to believe it's real.
It is hard to believe it's real. Yeah.
Their work still stands. But they're
Yeah, I assume this was one of the not.
Maybe their kings
You've
refuse
probably
their
never
wealth
seen
to
anything
protect
like this in
people
India.
and not make sense
Well,
of
I've
it.
never been to Karnataka, so perhaps there's these giant Ganesh sculptures, but I think I would have heard about them.
Yeah, probably. I feel
Yeah.
like this would be if these existed, there would also be like a million tourists around them right now too.
Yeah, and it'd be like UNESCO World Heritage Site. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. The carvings that she just passed
Uh-huh.
look like they're referencing another area in South India. They look more like Malibalipuram. They're beautiful, and they still sort of resemble Hoysala style of sculpture, even these sort of gigantic Ganesh forms, which is interesting. They're sort of very heavily ornamented and decorated.
My apologies.
So, I mean, I do think that like studying Indian art and architecture is a very sort of like physical activity in the sense that I remember when I was doing my research for my PhD, I was sort of, on the back of motorcycles and clambering over walls to visit abandoned temples to see paintings, like wall paintings and stuff. It wasn't quite this physical, I must say, but it is sort of, I don't know.
It's definitely not safe, by the way.
I think you can see the Hoysala in like the crown, Ganesh's crown that he's wearing in this. This one did seem to speak to recognizable iconography in really interesting ways. This whole like covered in, like being reclaimed by the jungle aspect to it. There are temples, absolutely, that are in the middle of the jungle and are much more abandoned, that are overgrown in that way, and the way that you see like Angkor Wat, all those pictures in Cambodia of temples being sort of reclaimed by trees. It's very much a sort of Western-centric viewpoint, right, of this idea of like these ancient civilizations that are, crumbling until we rediscover them, and so that's an interesting, I think, layer to view these games with. They were a lot less problematic than I was expecting. I kind of thought it would be a little bit more cringeworthy. So it's good. I'm glad that it's speaking to a 21st century audience, which is a more global world. It's good. And they were interesting. I really want to find out what they were looking for and how they found it.